Hi guys, it's John from Bright Wargaming here, and welcome back to my series looking at Dickensians Box 1 from Twisted, a Steampunk Skirmish Game. So, today we're going to be going through how I've painted up Dodger. So Dodger is the single model that I really caught my imagination and enticed me to look into this game in the first place, and so I've been really looking forward to getting some paint on this on him and bringing it to life. So Dodger is one of the Urkin, but he's clearly a bit more developed, smart, wily, and most importantly quick, riding around on his monowheel with his jacket and scarf whipping out behind him as he scoots away with some unfortunate gentleman's pocket watch in his hand. So let's get into how I painted him up. As ever, I've started off painting in grey with Rust-Oleum Surface Primer. It's cheap, it's easy to get hold of through Amazon, and especially in these sort of COVID times, and for me it works really, really well. For my colours, I'm generally using Vallejo game colour pretty much throughout. I got the full set of it about 2 years ago and I've found it works really well for me, but obviously each to their own. So to allow me to get the base coats on quickly, generally I start painting with the colours on the areas that are deepest on the model. It means that I have to be slightly less careful with how I paint, and because I can basically clean up my mistakes pretty easily as I go along. So the base colours, I've started with the cogs and gearing and the metals around the waist, and then into the wheel of the motorcycle with gunmetal, and then painted up his waistcoat with Xanadu dust from Citadel. The fairing on his wheel, I've gone with a gory red because basically red goes faster, so why not? Now to contrast this, trying to avoid looking too Christmassy, I've gone for a really dark green on his coat, and the dark green here I really like. So next up to the leathers. I've said before I tend to paint my leathers in brown, I find it gives me more depth. Now I've a little bit of concern that this won't get enough contrast between the cross belt and his waistcoat, but I hope you'll see later on that it got fixed up nicely when I got to the highlighting. So next up I've gone for brassy brass, for mostly on the trim for his wheel and a little bit on his gun, just to add a bit of visual interest. Moving on, I've just blocked out all the skin and other areas where I'm planning on putting in sort of brighter colours, sort of that most of them don't cover all that well. So like on his hair and his shirt and things like that. So I see Dodger as a bit of a dandy. So I've gone a little bit Willy Wonka for his top hat and gone for a nice bright purple, which I thought was really smart. Now, starting to ramp up the colours even more and add even more contrast, I've gone for a really bright green for his shirt underneath his jacket, and a nice bright orange for his scarf. Now, upping the dandy levels even more, I've gone full feather boa for his hat, and I'll let you choose whether this is tasteful or not. So while I was there, I also added a warm yellow for his hair, as I thought, well, just with the rest of the colours, I thought he'd look best as a blonde. So that's pretty much all the base colours done. It took me about 2 hours to get to this point, which I'm pretty happy with. Next up, chucked on a coat of Agrax Earthshade Wash from Citadel all over, just to add that sort of grimy shadow over the model, makes it look a bit more dirty, but then also covers off all the shadow. So as far as I'm concerned, once he's on his base, I consider this as pretty much tabletop ready, and I'd be happy to play. But as I've said before, to take time on the highlighting for me only adds to the outcome of the model, and then for me ultimately what that then translates to is a better experience on the tabletop. But fortunately for me as well, this is also my favourite part, because it's where it moves from colouring in to putting your own real stamp on the model and a chance to really push your boundaries, trying something new. So let's move on to that. So with the highlighting, I've started at the bottom model and moved my way up, starting with a dark grey over the black of the wheel to pick out the tread, moving on to a bright red for the fairing on his wheel, and Xandri dust to start to bring out his waistcoat. Next up is glorious gold to pick out the gold highlights on the wheel trim and on his gun, before moving on to a bone white to highlight his skin and the extremes of his waistcoat. Next, I moved on to his jacket, hitting all the upwards facing elements with goblin green, before blending back with a glaze of the original dark green, which just to pull back on the extremity of that goblin green, because it was a little bit too bright. The purple on his hat got a highlight of Warlord purple, which I think has given a really cool sort of Willy Wonka velvet look that I'm really pleased with. And while I was there, I hit the scarf with a sun yellow just to warm that up a bit. The feathers initially got a dry brush of electric blue, and I used livery green to make his shirt really pop. But I wasn't all that happy with the feathers, so I redid the tips in Warlord purple and gave the whole feathers another dry brush in a white. And I think the result ended up a lot more flamboyant, which I'm really happy with. And then it was a case of putting the model on its final base. If you want to see how I did those, please by all means go and see my previous video on how I've done my bases. But yeah, I'm super happy with how this guy has come out. I found these models really encouraged me to push myself, and the results I'm getting are pretty much the best results that I've ever managed. So big thanks to the guys at Demented Games, because these models are an absolute joy and they really challenge you to do your best. So that brings me pretty much to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. As ever, please leave any comments as to how I can make these better, because they are still a bit of a work in progress. The next video, I'm going to be working on the Urkin Alchemaster and the Blood Rage Urkin, which I'm sure will be lots of fun. But until then, keep safe, take care, goodbye.